On this episode of Captain's Tales, our target today is the backwater bull, the mighty redfish.
That qualifies as a strike. Oh my God. Everybody loves watching a popping cork go down. And look what happened. That is a big, beautiful Estero Bay redfish there.
Throughout maritime history, there have been experts on the water who knew how to navigate and locate their bounty. These individuals held the secrets to where, when, and how. This still holds true today. Get ready for an angling experience filled with sea secrets, fantastic fishing, and great destinations. For on this show, it's only the captain and the camera. On this episode of Captain's Tales, we are idling into Estero Bay with Captain Kevin Merritt. Our target today is the backwater bull, the mighty redfish. Captain Kevin has fished this fickled, pristine bay for many years, and the key here is knowing how to adjust to the tide phase and microdiversity of this beautiful but relatively small body of water.
Memories of me fishing before I remember it. I have photographic evidence that I fished, as soon as I could hold a rod. My father was a professional bass fisherman, and he instilled in us that fishing is something that you just kind of have to do. It's a sport that it just grabs you. The best tides in Estero to fish, people always say, low tide, high tide. You just go, and then you figure it out. Because the tide doesn't determine when I fish, it only determines where I fish. And as if you notice, we've started closer to the Gulf, and now we're working our way with the incoming tide towards the east wall. And these middle islands, this is kind of a staging area on these lower stages of an incoming tide before these fish will push up onto the crown. There's kind of a crown of a flat that runs the entire length of Estero Bay. And that's all we're doing is we're trying to find those fish on this particular tide stage. And just experience has told me that I want to stay a little bit closer towards the waterway there, or towards the passes. We're right in front of one of the passes, and it just makes all the difference in the world. The water's cleaner, there's a good flow of bait moving in. That's the key to figuring out this place. Came through there with a topwater plug, got a few swirls. So now we're going to try to switch off to a little swimming plug here, a little Yozuri. That greenback is just an Estero killer there. We're going to try that and see if we can get one to come up and smack it. Uh-oh. Oh my God. Let's dance, baby. My goodness. Oh. Now he's pulling the boat. The enormous redfish. Uh-oh. Golly, he's just barely hooked. I use this glove because it grips him so much better. Has a great grip to it. A little bit easier on the fish. Nothing like big fish and triple hooks to get you in a little trouble. There we go. Good morning, Mr. Big Old Red. Come here, stay on. That is a big redfish. You switch lures. Instead of retying, just have a bunch of rods rigged with a bunch of different stuff, and look what happens. That is a big, beautiful Estero Bay redfish there. He's pretty. Got that funky smell to him, like he's been eating shrimp and crabs all week. Oh, got him. Oh man. I saw that fish come up and swirl in the minnows. Took 2 casts. Oh my gosh. That is what you like to see. Ladies and gentlemen, Future chubby. I don't think he's gonna make the traveling squad, but he's a gamer. Settle down. Yay! This is gonna sound crazy coming from a professional, but I love catching little tiny reds like that. They're just so gorgeous, and he doesn't know he's little. Pretty fish. Pretty little guy. Same bar, same lure. What is that, maybe 15 inches smaller than the one before? It's okay. Any sight fished fish is good. Any sight fished fish is good. Alright, let's try that again. A classic example in Estero, you'll get groups of 3s and 4s. Get the heck off of them and you can come back and get another one. That's a nice fish. It's a red with a face full of user. Look how these fish head right out for the open water. They don't want to have anything to do with that stuff. There's no quit. Good red bulldog. Fish handling glove. Like I say, you know, when you got a plug, you don't want a 6 or 8 pound fish flopping around in the boat, especially a redfish with treble hooks. That's a great way when you're by yourself, especially at the end of the day. Look, I won, all right? Touch this leader and call you mine. Listen to him drumming. He's saying, let me go. Put me back in there. Well, here in just a second, little guy. That's beautiful. Hooks are little, but they're mean. What I've done with this Yozuri is replace these hooks with VMCs. The permasteel finish. And it's a 3X strong number 6. But the number 6 treble's awfully small, but this is the second redfish I've caught with this plug, and look how it gets them in the gummy part of the mouth, in the gummy part of the lip. Nice way to get them to hold on there. That's a nice, wow. Understated spots. Pretty fish. Settle down now. There we go. Long and lean, he needs to fatten up a little bit. Winter's coming.
We'll be right back with more of Captain's Tales.
I saw a couple buddies with him. We might ought to go back over there and whack them. You mind that? All right. You know, today we're fishing in Estero, and this is probably one of the most humbling pieces of water in Southwest Florida. The whole entire bay is only 12 miles long, and at its widest point, it's less than 4 miles wide. And, it's fed by only 3 inlets in that short amount of time, and 4 rivers, and it's a very dynamic, ever-changing. It's just humbling. There's no other way to describe it. It's just a humbling experience trying to guide in Estero Bay. Today we started out with topwater plugs. We thought with the lower tide we'd be able to catch the fish in shallow water. They weren't reacting to it too well, so we had to go to a subsurface bait. And then eventually, when the tide got high, we went to the pop and cork and a scented soft plastic. So it's definitely a challenging bay. It's not the kind of thing where you can come out here and throw one technique all day and expect to catch fish. It changes hour by hour in Estero, and I think it's perfect for an angler that's able to adapt. We've been working the tide all day, and now the tide's gotten a little higher. And in Estero, what that'll do, sometimes it'll just turn the fish off, and now they're kind of in that cruising mode. They're just going to cruise these bushes, these edges, and kind of digest what they've eaten for the whole incoming tide. We followed them over the bars, and now we're back up against the bushes here. And one of the techniques I like to use is a popping cork and a scented plastic. What you need is a titanium popper. It's definitely worth the extra money to spend the titanium. They come out of the bushes a little easier, and you can't bend the wire, you can't hurt the wire, so they last a lot longer. You need an 1/8 ounce or a 1/16 ounce jig head. This happens to be a Bass Assassin 1/8 ounce. The color's not terribly important because the fish are going to be attracted to the noise and the scent. Everybody's fished popping corks with live shrimp. It's probably one of the most effective ways to fish live shrimp, and I've discovered that you can do it, with artificials. Very popular in Texas. So what I'm using is a 30-pound fluorocarbon leader. I'm going to use maybe 30 inches of it. You kind of gauge this depending on how deep you want it to go. And what I do is I always start deeper because I can trim it off and retie the jig. So I'll take about, that's probably 3 feet there. And now the popping cork may seem elementary, but the brass weights down here on the bottom, that's where you tie the hook. That's what weights the cork, makes it stand up. So all I do there with my fluorocarbon, and fluorocarbon is one of those funny things people always say, do you use fluorocarbon? And I say, even if you're just a weekend angler, the expense is well worth it. Maybe not so the fish can't see it, but just because it's more abrasion resistant, it lasts longer, it's tougher, and heck, nowadays it doesn't hurt to give yourself every advantage. Just using a real simple cinch knot there. 5 turns in the 30. Trim off the tag end a little bit. Now down on this end, I tie a little non-slip loop knot. Gives it a little bit of a flop. You definitely don't want to kill any of the action on your tail. As much wiggle as you can get out of it while you're popping it. Cinch that down. Okay, so this is our basic rig here. And I can put any kind of plastic you want to on here. I prefer the scented plastics. This is a pretty amazing technique. You're going to let it sit there. You're going to pop it pretty hard, and you're going to let it sit there for a pretty good while, and you want that fish to pick that scent up. So that's pretty much essentially it there. Looks like a good one there. Nice and smelly and slimy. Little wind there. Thread that right on the hook. It's very important with popping cork in a jig head to get it as straight as possible. You can see how straight that is, because that's going to give it that nice jigging action that they're looking for. Now here's a little secret. I'm a big fan of braided line on my spinning reels. Big fan of braided line. But what I've done here is tied a short little piece of 30-pound fluorocarbon to attach to the popping cork. This stiffness of the mono helps keep it from fouling, from the braid getting wrapped around the cork. I used to attach the braid directly to it, but I'll do the same thing, just a short little 4-inch piece, and I'm using just a cinch knot here, 5 turns. When I do use a cinch knot, I always leave the tag in a little bit longer than I would if I was tying on a hook or something to allow for a little bit of slippage. And there you go. There's the Estero Bay Stinky Plastic Popping Cork Rig. Estero Bay, it does have its moments when it can rival anywhere else in Southwest Florida. Those moments are dictated a lot by pressure. It's a very shallow bay, so you definitely got to have a little bit of water in the bay. During our winter cycle, the morning tides are extremely low, and it makes most of the bay inaccessible. Most of the bay is a dry mud pit, so it makes it very challenging. It's always a joy, and as an angler, you get that feeling inside when you make a cast and you're thinking in the back of your mind, this is where they're supposed to be. I'm throwing the right lure, the right tide, the right time of year, the right color, every right presentation, right twitch, everything. And then it happens. And it's that great feeling you get inside. The second you stick that fish, you realize that it's a good fish, and you know you did your job. Just kind of a rattle. I'll do that when it's a little calmer. When it's bumpy like this, you can give it a good hard pop, but sometimes just those little tick, tick, tick. That qualifies as a strike. Oh my God. When you're doing this, it's like watching paint dry. You're sitting there watching a big orange cork. You're thinking, nothing's gonna happen, nothing's gonna happen, and you gotta pay attention, because I wasn't there and I almost lost the rod. Nice redfish. My favorite fish to target, my favorite fish to go after, and I guess it's because growing up in North Carolina, it was such a great thing to catch, and that's the redfish. He responds really well to artificials. He responds to a variety of techniques. You can catch him from top to bottom, topwater plugs all the way down to jigs, jerk baits, and they move so much. They're never stationary. They're not necessarily an ambush predator. They're more like a grazer, like cattle. You know, they're always moving. They're always looking for food. And then when they shut off, to me, like that happened to us today, when the tide stage got a little higher, the fish shut off, and we had to go after them and catch them in that sleeping mode where they're no longer grazing, they're just cruising, kind of digesting what they've eaten. So that's my favorite fish to catch by far, is redfish. Perfect little red. It's funny you call these little. That's a nice fish. That's a nice fish in anybody's book. Very clean, and they're in the clean water. You know, the high tide doesn't stop the artificial lure fishing. That's the biggest misconception. You just got to change your game up a little bit. This is great for kids too. Everybody loves watching a popping cork go down. Just make sure you got your hand on the rock. Can't believe I almost lost it. Ready to go, Junior. Stop. Gonna bite you. Yeah. And what I'm going to do is make the longest cast I can and just pop it and let the current carry it across the front of the bar. And you get pretty aggressive with the pop. You're not going to scare off anything substantial. Yeah. The real trick is when one eats it is you cannot be in an awful big hurry to set the hook. Everybody's first reaction when the cork goes down, we're taught as little kids, the cork goes down, you set the hook. Here, what you want to do is reel until you feel it. Because when he pulls that cork under, I might not know which way he's going. He might be running right at me, he might be left, right. So I'll reel up the slack till I feel some resistance on there, then I'll crack it. You'll never catch me saying this, but I think I'm going to say it. You can honestly tell the difference between a snook and a redfish when they hit that popping cork. The snook double clutches it, boom, boom, and the redfish just hits it like a Volkswagen going under a bridge, you know, and you got something hanging off of it. There's just so gorgeous, and he doesn't know he's little. Another beautiful blue tail red. That is pretty red. Fishing is something that you just kind of have to do. You know, it's a sport that just grabs you. Something that you love to do. It's always a challenge. Every single day is something different. I've never said to myself, this is what's going to happen, and then that happens. And I think that's growing as an angler, growing as a fisherman. You kind of get to that point where you realize that the challenge is not so much in catching the fish, but in actually figuring them out. And once you get to that point, that's when you know you're a captain.
Closed captioning brought to you by Moonlighter Push Poles and Nets. Join us again next week for another episode of Captain's Tales. And try one more fishing spot online. Log on to www.captainstales.com.